He sat quietly near the trash bins, no spotlight, no welcome sign, just a forgotten name and a folded invitation. But 7 minutes later, the stadium would stop, and everyone would stand. This wasn't in the script, but it became the moment no one would forget. Welcome to NT, where everyday kindness becomes unforgettable. Let's begin this journey together. At 84 years old, Harold Brenner never thought he'd find himself returning to his old college campus. His home sat quietly on the northern edge of Fort Collins, Colorado. Modest, simple, much like the man himself. That morning, when he opened his mailbox and saw an envelope bearing the seal of Colorado State University, something in his chest sank. Inside was a formal invitation. The university was honoring him as a distinguished alumnus and inviting him to speak at the class of 2025 commencement. Tucked inside was a golden card, clearly marked, "Honor Guest Front Row." Harold sat still for a long moment. His fingers gripped the paper gently as his eyes drifted out the window. A breeze stirred the old trees in the backyard, and beside him, the wooden cabinet creaked softly in the draft. On top of that cabinet sat a small wooden box adorned with a Marine Corps emblem. The one place he kept the things he never talked about. A Medal of Honor, a few fading photographs of brothers in arms, and the folded telegram that had once delivered the worst news about his best friend, lost somewhere in Southeast Asia. Harold had been a senior political science student in 1964. Back then, he was a tall, sharp young man, quick on his feet in class discussions, dreaming of graduate school and someday becoming a professor. But war broke out. The draft letter arrived, and he left school just weeks before graduation. He promised his advisor he'd return, but combat tours followed one after another, and his name, Harold L. Brenner, never did make it onto the list of CSU graduates. He joined the Marines like so many others, but no one expected he'd rise to the rank of Major General, commanding some of the most complex missions of his time and earning the Medal of Honor for his role in the brutal 1968 Battle of Hue. Within military circles, his name carried weight and respect. But inside Harold's heart, there remained something unnamed, a quiet regret for the diploma that never came. For 60 years, he never brought it up. No complaints, no requests, but he never forgot. Sometimes, walking past a university, he'd catch a glimpse of graduates tossing their caps into the air and would instinctively look away. He didn't need a degree to prove anything. But once, he had dreamed of being a teacher, a dream that never got the chance to begin. What moved him most in that letter wasn't the title or the seat. It was the final line, handwritten beneath the printed words, "Nomination submitted by student Megan L. Brenner, his granddaughter." A senior, majoring in history, the one who always believed her grandfather deserved to be called Bachelor Harold Brenner, not just because of what he had done, but because no dream should be forgotten simply because of war. Harold didn't tell anyone he'd accepted the invitation, but the next morning he quietly took out his neatly pressed suit, slid the gold invitation into his breast pocket, right beside the medal he'd carried all his life. If you've ever left a dream unfinished, but never let it go, comment one word: unfinished. On graduation morning, Harold arrived early. He came alone. Megan had to line up with her class, so she'd asked a friend to assist him at the gate, but he had gently refused. "I still remember the way, and I'd like to walk in on my own." He wore his deep brown suit, neatly pressed the night before. On his chest, polished until it gleamed, was his Medal of Honor pin. In one hand, he held an old CSU baseball cap, the same one he'd kept since 1964. The brim was faded, but the words Colorado State University still stood clear. The stadium was packed, flags waving, banners flapping, loudspeakers echoing names and announcements. It was a world in motion, and among the sea of youth, Harold walked slowly, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to take in every corner of the campus that once shaped him. At the honor guest check-in, he handed over his invitation with a warm smile. The student greeter, Liam, young and efficient, tapped through his iPad, then frowned slightly. "I don't see your name in the front row seating chart. There might have been a last-minute shuffle. Would you mind heading to the left section? It's for overflow guests. Still near the stage." Harold nodded. He was used to being moved around, reassigned, overlooked. 25 years in the military had taught him how to stand, sleep, and eat in harsher conditions than this. Still, something in his chest tightened. The overflow area was near the west windbreak, close to the utility zone. Folding chairs had been lined up near the public trash bins. The air carried the scent of spilled soda, food wrappers, and damp grass. No nameplate, no usher. Harold quietly took a seat near the edge. He held his cap gently in his lap and looked out toward the main stage, where university officials, donors, and keynote speakers were posing for photos, signing guest books, laughing together. No one looked his way. No one knew the silver-haired man in the worn-out suit, sitting near the trash cans, had once led a rescue operation in Hugh City that saved over 100 soldiers and civilians. No one knew that the man with the gentle eyes had earned the Medal of Honor in the midst of chaos most people could never imagine. But today, what hurt him most wasn't the disregard. It was the quiet realization that the degree he was finally being given after 60 long years didn't seem to matter all that much to the place he had once dreamed of calling his own. From where he sat, he could see handshakes, fanfare, and the big screen flashing, "Welcome to the class of 2024 and our distinguished guests." He didn't blame anyone. He wasn't angry, but deep down there was a quiet ache. Not because he wanted applause, but because he had hoped that today, finally, a missing piece of his life would be put gently into place. And yet here he was, sitting beside a trash bin. Across the stadium, Megan sat in her cap and gown, excitement giving way to confusion. Her grandfather had promised to come early. By now, he should have been sitting front and center. She scanned the crowd, and then her eyes locked onto a figure she knew instantly. Curved shoulders, that old cloth cap, alone seated quietly near the back utility fence. She stood up. "Ah, that's my grandfather," she whispered, voice tight in her throat. No nameplate, no recognition, no sign of honor. Megan moved. She made her way through the tight rows, not running, but moving with purpose. At the operations table backstage, she found Dean Rachel Monroe, the woman overseeing the speaker lineup. Megan leaned in and spoke softly. "Ma'am, the man sitting near the fence in the guest overflow area, that's my grandfather, Harold Brenner, class of 1964. The university confirmed him as a distinguished speaker." Rachel looked up, eyes narrowing. It took her all of 3 seconds to understand. She grabbed her walkie-talkie. "Hold speaker 3, pause the program for 5 minutes. I'll take care of this now." No announcements followed, no alarms, just a strange stillness, like someone had gently pulled a string that slowed the entire stadium. The schedule stopped. Movement on stage paused. A few organizers began walking briskly toward the back row where Harold sat, still unaware. No one said what was happening, but Megan knew. Everything was about to change. Just minutes after the quiet exchange backstage, a voice came through the stadium speakers, calm, steady, unmistakable. "Before we continue the ceremony, we'd like to invite a very special guest to join us on stage. A man who first enrolled at Colorado State University in 1960 and who once set aside his dreams of a college degree to answer his country's call. Major General Harold L. Brenner, class of 1964. Please join us at the stage." Harold looked around, visibly startled. An event staff member approached gently and leaned in. "Sir, we sincerely apologize for the earlier mistake. Please, Come with me." He stood slowly, still wearing the same old brown suit, still holding the worn CSU cap in his hand. And then, from the furthest back row to the front, people began to stand. There was no cue, no music, just the silent agreement of thousands of people who knew this man deserved to be seen. Applause followed, soft at first, then steady, then thunderous. Graduates clapped, parents clapped, even the stage crew in the back stood up straight, hands at their sides, eyes locked on Harold Brenner. As he stepped up the final stair, another figure moved toward him, Dr. Daniel Reyes, the university president. Dressed in formal academic robes, gold honor cords draped across his shoulders. He didn't say a word. He simply smiled, extended his hand, and then, with slow, deliberate care, placed the university's honorary stole around Harold's shoulders. On the screen behind them, the stadium lights caught the words, "Welcome back, Major Brenner, CSU class of 1964. Harold turned to the crowd, no notes, no microphone, just a voice filled with calm strength. "I didn't come back for a diploma. I came back because someone believed my dream was still unfinished, and today, I believe my granddaughter was right." But the story didn't end there. Within hours, a video of that exact moment was already circulating on campus social media. Someone had filmed it from the student section with the caption, "The hero who was seated next to the trash cans," and then made the whole stadium rise. Over 4,000 shares overnight, alumni, veterans, even retired faculty began chiming in. Most said the same thing. This should have been done right from the start. 3 days later, the university board convened an emergency meeting. They introduced the Brenner Protocol, a new policy guaranteeing that any alumnus who served the country, especially recipients of the Medal of Honor, would always be honored properly at official university events. No more overflow guests, no more seating mistakes, no more silence in the wings. As for Harold, he gave no interviews, wrote no thank you letters. He simply returned to his quiet home in Fort Collins. There, he placed the honorary stole beside his Medal of Honor, inside the same wooden box that had held a lifetime of memories, and beneath it, he scribbled one simple sentence. "It took 60 years to come back, but sometimes the right moment is when people finally stop to listen." He never asked why they sat him near the trash cans, and he never needed anyone to explain, because sometimes all it takes is one well-timed voice and a community kind enough to listen, for mistakes to be mended with dignity. Do you believe timely respect can truly change things? Comment one word: dignity. If today's story touched something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to N2 Amazing Stories, where we bring you real, meaningful moments that remind us all of what truly matters. Because the greatest lessons often don't happen under the spotlight. They happen the moment we choose to stand, not because someone told us to, but because our hearts knew it was the right thing to do.